Hello guys, welcome to the channel. Today, I'm ranking all 29 MCU final battles from Iron Man to Thor Love and Thunder, all the movies, not including the TV shows because it makes it way harder. And yeah, so things I'm gonna do after this. Miss Marvel stuff is gonna be coming after this. Same eventually will be Cobra Kai and Stranger Things. So it's gonna be Miss Marvel, then the Orville, and then once Cobra Kai comes out, I'm going to do that one. Try to do that one as fast as I can, and then Stranger Things. And on the movie side, after this will be Harry Potter stuff, and then we'll get to The Hobbit, as I promised, after this. And then after Hobbit, maybe, I'm going to have to do a bunch of 2022 movie reviews, like, I'm going to have to do Avatar. Sometime I'm going to do my Bullet Train movie review, which will probably be coming next week whenever I go see it, which I do want to see. It looks good. Everything Everywhere All at Once. I'm going to have to catch up on a bunch of movies that I missed. The Gray Man. So you'll see when a lot of these are coming out. I'm going to watch them when I can, and a lot of them will come out after I do this ranking. So, well, obviously. So, that's about it. Enjoy the video. Go check out my MCU playlist. Go check out my Thor stuff so far. Thor Love and Thunder movie review. My other 4 Thor movie reviews. And without further, let's get into it. Coming in number 28 is going to be Thor: The Dark World. Overall, just not an interesting final battle because there's just nothing to engage with when it comes to the plot and the villain. Malekith is a very uninteresting villain. It's been pretty clear. I mean, you don't really know his motivation. He just, all he knows is that he wants the ether. He's a dark elf with the ether. Trying to this sort of thing up above London or whatever city that is. It might be somewhere in Wales, I don't know. But he's just doing that and nothing else. Also, the plot is just very confusing overall. You're not really engaged with it. There's nothing really to care about. So by the end, you just have to feel no emotion, and then you're like, all right. Then there's also some really bad character decisions. I think what they did with the Earth characters, I think they're very annoying in this one, especially Darcy and Ian or whatever his name is, the intern guy, and then they're just making it in the middle of a practically crisis. Just weird, just a lot of weird stuff here, and also just undoing of Loki's death is just unforgivable. I mean, I love what they did with him in Ragnarok, but here it just doesn't work. I'm not really going to go into why, because final battle talk, it's epilogue. And overall, just the action's not that interesting. I mean, there's some fun portal hopping here and there, but overall, there's nothing really stylistic about the action. There's parts where where Malekith is attacking with the ether, and then Thor's just trying to deflect it, and it's just that pretty much for half the final battle, and then portal hopping ensues, and then there's the end. I mean, it is satisfying because finally the movie ends, but by the end of it, you're like, okay, next. Coming in number 20 is going to be Captain Marvel. Overall, I didn't really hate this one. It's an entertaining enough action sequence. The main problem here is that there's a lot of inconsistencies. There are moments where she's just taking out people in a ship. I mean, she's taking them out nonetheless, but she's not killing them. And then 5 minutes later, she's taking out entire ships. And yeah, interesting nonetheless. So, I mean, the only really thing that was a threat to her is Yon-Rog's gauntlet thing. Not even the freaking torpedoes were a threat to her. Which, think about your logic here, directors, or Feige. I don't know who's in charge of making this final battle. Maybe it was the helmet thing that helped her. I don't know. Maybe that's the thing that gives her flying powers. Who knows? Anyway, so also other thing is that because her arc wasn't that interesting, it was basically just her remembering who she was. I mean, I don't hate those kinds of arcs. I mean, I love Indonesian action thrillers, whether it's Born or Paycheck, which underrated movies. You should go check that one out. I like these kinds of movies overall. There's just something interesting about them. They try to do that here, just doesn't work because that's her complete arc. And as an arc with the character that's this powerful and that's the arc you give her, it's just it feels like this movie was rushed, especially the final battle, and even when Ronan shows up, there's just no threat to her whatsoever. There's just nothing there that's that interesting. So, between this and Dark World's close. I went with this one ahead because at least there's the Flurkin, which also made for one of my least favorite scenes where the Flurkin rips Nick Fury's eye out. I mean, it was set up pretty well. I don't remember which movie. I think it was Winter Soldier, where he said last time I trust someone, I lost an eye, and then he said that, and then that's the reason why he lost his eye. Just come on, really. 27, 26 are really close, but I think I just like 26 because I like the movie more, and I think the journey works a bit better. But the thing with 27 is that, yeah, that's Eternals. The problem here, it's just a frustrating one because this could have been actually a really good ending to the movie, but they just had way too much going on. There were some moments where they tried to fake me, and I thought the Deviants were going to team up with them. There's a little moment where they took out Icarus or whatever, but no, threw that right out of the window, which actually could have been a good idea. There's just too much going on. Thena's fighting the Deviant, what's it called, and Makari are fighting Icarus. Bright's doing her own thing. Cersei's trying to stop the Celestial. There's just way too much going on for a between 30 and 40-minute action sequence, and it's just frustrating. Also, the absence of Kumail Nanjiani was odd. It's just like he left. It's just like he had no time to film, so he just leaves the final batch. It's an odd character choice overall. Also, there's just too many philosophical ideas. Like in the end, Cersei's like, should we have saved humanity? And then it just makes me groan because as a human, you could probably see how I could feel about that. And it's just a frustrating one because there could have been a lot of potential here. Like, there's some good ideas thrown in here. But in the end, like the movie, it was just not very good. There's too much going on there. And I was just kind of exhausted by the end of it because of how long this action sequence is. It is really long also. I didn't mention that part. But, yeah. As like the movie, don't care for this action sequence that much, and because the movie just didn't set up anything that I wanted to be paid off, because the movie just wasn't that interesting overall, because it just jumps too much, because the pacing's so weird. It's just get the game back together. Oh, Icarus is joined with Airship, so we have to go destroy the Celestial that's being born. And with this much story and for this much time, they should have done a TV show, and then actually this could have been a good conclusion because we would have bought into everything. Very frustrating. Coming number 26 is going to be Black Widow. Another really frustrating one because, the movie I thought actually was very grounded and gritty for the most part. There's humor bits thrown in there, especially with Yelena. But the problem with the end, there's two halves to the final battle. First half is the exposition dump, and second half is the fight while skydiving. And the first half is decent. I think the exposition dump, it's a good way to do an exposition dump compared to whatever they did in Matrix 2, which one of the worst examples of an exposition dump ever. So overall, I didn't hate this one, but it does drag the movie down because the movie was very grounded throughout it, and then it just has this spectacle-filled final battle, which was not really needed. And then you're like, oh, it has to be a flying space thing or a flying hover carrier. I don't know. And then we have to have a fight while skydiving. We have to have a huge exposition dump and just big revelations. The problem is it doesn't really fit the rest of the movie. The main reason why I just put it ahead is because I think I was just on the ride throughout it, unlike Eternals. So, and I think it's a better movie than the bottom three. So yeah, I didn't hate this one. It's not really bad. It's not really that bad because I think the action itself is good. There's some really good bits with Red Guardian and Melina and all the family characters have some good bits. But I think the problem is it does do the ultimate. It does do the ultimate sin with what they did with Taskmaster, which is really frustrating. I really did not care for what they did with Taskmaster. It's just very disappointing. And overall, that's also what partially killed it. The twist that was Olga Kurylenko, whatever. But by the end, I was like, good movie, but not good final battle. Coming in number 25? Yeah, 25 is Thor. By the way, before I keep going, I got a list right here to keep on track because I'm probably not, because it's a very big list and I don't really want to fall off track. So yeah, number 25, Thor. I've always really enjoyed this movie. It's pretty fun. The big problem here, Thor and Loki are just not a good match, and they're good together, and they're good when they're against each other, but just not when they're fighting each other. Because the problem is Loki doesn't exactly stand a chance against Thor, so it just doesn't make for that interesting a fight. It's just fighting. It's just for 2 minutes, and it's just not that interesting. As much as I love the Rainbow Road, it's a bit of a forgettable. Also, another problem is that the movie has a lack of urgency throughout it. So by the time it gets to the end, you suddenly realize Loki's trying to destroy a planet because throughout it, there's not much there's a lack of urgency on Earth, and then Loki just suddenly just puts the destroyer on the table. It shows up, battle, move into the other part with Loki and Laufey on Asgard, and the way he just sort of stages that whole part, it's a little odd the way it plays out, but it's not bad, it makes sense. But overall, it's an alright final battle. I don't hate this one, but I think the movie itself is sort of what keeps it up because I do enjoy this movie overall. And I can respect what they were trying to do for the most part, but I'm not, and I do enjoy this one. I do really enjoy this movie, and I like the art. I like on the character standpoint what they did with Thor here, but as a final battle between him and Loki, not the best. And also they've this is the first of a few times where they would fake Loki's death. I mean, this is probably the least unforgivable of the three. Yeah, the least unforgivable of the three times. So middle maybe, I don't know, doesn't matter. But overall, yeah, he just dies too many times, and it just starts a trend that I don't like. Number 24 is going to be Spider-Man Homecoming. As much as I really do enjoy this movie, I really like it, the final battle is probably the worst part of it, because it's a really weird action sequence. It starts with one of my favorite scenes. It's not really part of the final battle, but it really just starts when he goes to Liz's house, and apparently her dad is the Vulture, or what's it called, Adrian Toomes. And I think that's what makes this scene, this whole final battle. It's a really good setup. I love the whole stuff in the car. And then you get into the final battle, and not that interesting. It's just Ned trying to direct Peter in a car, well, on a computer, and Peter's in the car. You know what I mean? And then he's on, Vulture's on a plane, he's trying to hijack Stark's plane to get all the material he needs. And then after that, Spider-Man's trying to stop him, and then it just concludes on Coney Island Beach, or Coney Island, where they have a one-on-one fight. And it's just, the problem is when it comes to Spider-Man final battles, even within the MCU, this one's just not interesting. I'm just like, okay, you could have done, I mean, I don't really know what they could have done better, because they didn't really set up anything enough, and I think a lot of the action in this movie, it's decent enough, but it's not really great, because, like, it's just very small scaled, and that's how I feel about this final battle. Not really a bad thing, but when you have a final battle in the Spider-Man action sequence, where generally the final battle is the biggest action sequence in some of them, they're generally smaller, but like the original Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2, but there was generally a bigger action sequence before that to sort of help it. I don't know. I do enjoy this one. It's not a bad one or anything. I think it works for Peter's arc, where he has to go back to his old scrappy sweatshirt suit. I think that part of it works for me, because he learns that he can be Spider-Man without the high-tech suit that Tony Stark gave him. And I really like the movie. I like how they ended his arc here. And I think with Vulture, it works very well, because he's more of an anti-hero when you think about it. So, yeah, overall, I do enjoy this one. But it's a little frustrating at the same time. Coming in number 23 is going to be Airman the Watch. This is a weird one, because as an action sequence, it would be a bit higher. But when I think of this as a final battle, it's like a car chase where they're playing a cat and mouse game while Hope and Hank are trying to save Janet. It's an odd final battle because of that. And, I mean, it's a good enough conclusion to the movie. I mean, Sonny Birch is a very uninteresting villain. Ghost is whatever. So there's not the most interesting villains, but I kind of like what they're going for. It's a fun little action sequence, and it's the right conclusion of the movie, I guess, because it's a fun anime movie. I love the cat and mouse part of this final battle, and it's good enough. I think there's a lot of fun aspects to it, like all the Ant-Man stuff. So, and I do enjoy this one because it's just fun. I love all the bits where what's it called? It's like Michael Pena is screaming in the car, because then they enlarge it. I like the car. I like the action sequence itself, but as a final battle, it's odd at best, because I wouldn't think of this car chase cat and mouse game as a final battle. I would think of it as a middle action sequence. So I'm a bit torn on this one, so that's why I landed it a bit in the mid. I landed like around the middle where it could have been. As a final battle, near the bottom, I guess. But as an action sequence, it'd be way higher, because I think it's a very fun action sequence. Yeah, so I do enjoy this one, as a conclusion of the movie, it's a little odd, but I mean, and there's not really much of an arc for Scott Lang here, so there's just not much there, but I think it's a fun enough conclusion. Coming number 22 is going to be Iron Man 2. This one, like some of the other ones, it's a superficially good action sequence. The problem is, there's just not much of emotion there, and I think the movie's story is very oddly told. This is probably my favorite part of the movie, because it's a great Iron Man action sequence. All the drones, I think all of that's a lot of fun. But then the main problem is that you also get to the final bit with Whiplash, and that's odd. I mean, it's a fun action sequence. I actually really like this one overall. But as a final battle, I mean, it's a good final battle. There's just no emotion there, but like compared to the first one, where like there's a ton of emotion, where like Tony has to sacrifice himself essentially to make sure that Stain doesn't do what he's about to do, more or less. and I think that all of that really works. Here, there's just not much emotion there because of Whiplash. He gets destroyed within a minute, so it's just like there's just nothing interesting here. And all the hammer tech, that stuff is kind of annoying, honestly. But I think this one's enjoyable. The movie itself, it sets up. There's not much action overall, but I think it makes this final battle I think it's a good conclusion of the movie. This is the definition of a good final battle. Coming number 21, this is definitely one of the most torn on. That's Thor: Love and Thunder. This one's frustrating because there's a lot of fun action. I like what they do with the kids. I mean, it doesn't really make sense, but it makes for a fun action sequence. Very fun final battle. The problem is the setup for the final battle, because I didn't really care for the movie that much. It's just odd because you have there's so much jokes through it, and so you can't really take anything seriously. I mean, there's a lot of stakes here, but you don't exactly know them because you don't really know what this eternity thing is. There's just a lot of stuff that's just not quite there. But onto the good stuff, I think this is a very fun action sequence. It's done well. The effects are really good. This is some of the best effects in the movie, I'd say. And I like what they did with gore for the most part. But then once you get to the epilogue, it's just odd, because I mentioned this in my Thor movies ranked in my full review, that Thor getting the child just doesn't work. And, I mean, I don't really exactly know what it is because, like, I mean, it's just, like, I mean, I guess they conclude the arc, but it's just an odd way to conclude the arc, so some of that I didn't care for. Thor giving his powers to the kids, it's fun because because it's enjoyable to see kids take down these shadow bugs or whatever they're called, those disgusting beings. I think it's fun. It reminds me a bit of Shazam overall. But the problem is, and then once you get to, I think the battle with Gore the God Butcher, I think works. And I think the stuff with Jane, I think in the final battle, that she chooses the decision. She makes the decision to fight instead of sit in a bed while she's hopefully healed. I think that works for the character. I think the fact that she did die worked for the movie overall. And I think Natalie Portman did a good job overall in the movie. But what killed the final battle was really all the stuff with the eternity thing. It just makes no sense. So that all just really frustrates me. Coming in number 20 is going to be Iron Man, where Thor: Love and Thunder is filled with all kinds of fun, and some with Ragnarok and some of the other ones. This one's pretty small scale, and I don't think there's not really any jokes thrown into this one. So overall, I think this one's pretty fun, because you have two Iron Man suits battling each other. One's bigger than the other, and supposedly more advanced. Not really when you think about it. So overall, I do really enjoy this one. I love the little ticking clock where or not really ticking clock, but both parts where the power level is going down. And that stuff works. I like what they did at the end of it, where like Tony sort of has to sacrifice himself to make sure that this thing doesn't blow in the city or whatever. And I think, or that he dies or something. I don't know. Overall, I actually do enjoy this one. It is a good action sequence. It's well made. It's well done. The problem is, I think a lot of the good action sequences and a lot of the good character arcs have already been paid off pretty much. So it's essentially just a boss fight. It's a fun boss fight, but it's just not. It's probably my least favorite part of the movie when you think about it. And this is one of my favorite MCU movies. So, and I don't think this hurts this one. The final battle, I don't think it hurts the movie, because the movie's already, because it doesn't hurt the movie. It's just not. I just think there are better final battles. MCU has had higher stakes, higher antes. They have higher stakes and more antics as it goes on. So, but it's a good start. But I think the problem here is that they've already kind of concluded Tony's arc, and I love the I am Iron Man line right after, about 5 minutes after this. But I think it's a good action sequence, just not great. Coming in number 19 is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. This one's kind of like Eternals, where like there's just too much going on. But I mean, it's kind of split into parts. It's like the part with, I love the stuff with Rocky and Groot where they have to hit the button. I love that part's hilarious. I love it every time. The stuff with I think with Ego versus with Quill, I think that side of it that's actually pretty fun, where it's essentially one Celestial versus another. It's pretty fun. But the problem is, once they throw the Sovereign in, that's when it kind of goes to, yeah. The problem with that is that there's just too much going on, especially when the Sovereigns show up, and then it's just like once they die, that's when the final battle gets good, and before that, it's just odd at best. So I don't hate this one, but the problem is there's just too much going on. It's way too long. There's a lot of moments where like Ego's just dragging them under, and they drag this action sequence out so much. I'm like, just get off the goddamn planet. But like overall, I think this one, it works on an emotional level. I love what they do with Yondu. That stuff is amazing. It's flawless, nothing wrong with it. And I think the character based stuff is really what put this one, because this one and the Eternals are pretty similar. But whereas Eternals failed at the character stuff, this one excelled at it, especially with Yondu and Star-Lord. But also at the same time, there's a plot line involving Star-Lord discovering his father and then realizing his father as a bad guy and then has to kill him. I don't think that side of it works. But really, I think it's a good action sequence. It's decently well made. There's a lot going on, but I mean, the more and more I watch this movie, the more and more I can get past that part of it and just enjoy the action sequence as a whole. But it's a bit of an odd final battle, and it goes on for way too long. And the epilogue is also way too long. But I like what they did with Yondu here. I think that side of it is my favorite part of it. Yondu is by far my favorite part of this final battle, and probably my favorite part of this movie. And that all really works. Coming number 18 is going to be Black Panther. This one's kind of frustrating because on one hand, the character step between T'Challa and Killmonger really works on that. Like at the end where Killmonger finally sees the sunset on Wakanda, it humbles him and is very profound stuff. But then you have the other side of it where it's War Rhino. It's a very bad fight between Black Panther and what's it called, Killmonger. It's just I just wanted a better fight. Like they could have done something good. And somehow this movie got nominated for Best Picture. That's odd. I mean, maybe it's because of the themes, not because of the amazing effects. I don't know. I don't exactly know how Oscars work 100%, but that's not the point. Anyway, so I mean, the stuff with War Rhinos, it's not as bad as I make it out to be. I've mentioned this a lot in videos. It's just odd to throw in there. They're just not good CGI. I mean, the Jabari tribe in joining in, that's fun. I like the whole thing where Okoye and her people are fighting Killmonger. But then also there's another side where Shuri is helping the scientist guy, I forget what his name is, destroy those people. Those Wakandan ships that are trying to get out. I mean, I don't really have many thoughts on that overall. I think it sets up a good final battle. You're definitely compelled because of Killmonger. You know where his motivations are coming from. You know everything about him. Great villain. He's what elevates this one overall from being a bit lower because honestly, there's a lot of issues here. CGI not good here, and the action overall is just not interesting. So on a character level, this one's really good. On an action level, maybe it's not bad. It's not that bad. It's mid. Maybe a little bit worse than that. Number 17 is going to be Ant-Man. This one's a very fun one because I really enjoy the stuff on the Thomas the Tank Engine set with two ant-sized people fighting each other. That is, I love it. I mean, this is very creative. This might be the most creative final battle because it's on the Thomas the Tank Engine set. I could throw in the whole heist bit in there. I could throw in the whole last hour. Really, the whole second half of the movie is one big final battle, more or less, because there's a heist sequence and then there's the whole bit with Ant-Man versus Yellow Jacket. The problem is there's not much of a rivalry between the two, so it just doesn't make for that interesting. But I think it's a satisfying conclusion to the movie I just watched. I love the whole bit where he hugs his daughter. I forget her name. Cassie. I think that's a very satisfying bit. Him coming out the quantum realm, very relieving in a way. And it sets up a bunch of interesting ideas that explore the Airman the Watch about the quantum realm, especially. And I think there's a lot of great things. As I said, Thomas the Tank Engine fight, I love it. It's great. And I love how they just play around with the whole beat, the things that make it big and small. I love all of that. Overall, great final battle. I've always really enjoyed this movie, and I think it has a good final battle. And the only reason why it's not higher is that there's not as much emotion. I don't think it has the highest antics of any of them compared to some of the other ones. But overall, I think Peyton Reed made a good final battle. I love the whole heist sequence before that. I think it was well set up. There's just the problem with it is I just don't think the villain's that interesting. But I think I am compelled with the plot here, and I think that's what makes it overall. So I do enjoy this one. Number 16 is also a frustrating one. That is Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. The thing with the final battle is one side of it, Zombie Strange is here. Very cool. I love all of that. Very Raimi, very cool. This final battle is Raimi printed all over it. I love the way that they really redeemed Wanda. That really worked for me. But the problem, we didn't get enough of Zombie Strange. We just didn't get enough of it. I wanted more than just the zombie things surrounding Wanda. But I'm just a very mixed sequence because on one hand, and I do think it's a satisfying enough conclusion to the movie. There's some odd epilogue stuff like the eye and the way that solves in the post-credit scene, but I'm not going to talk about that right here. Overall, I enjoy this movie, and I think that this is a good conclusion to it because I am compelled throughout the plot. There's not really much there that I dislike here. I think the effects are well done. It's a well done action sequence. I think the way that they redeem one, I'd be surprised if that was her final death. Because I mean, it feels like a complete character arc. I mean, I'm not saying that she gets a fun redemption arc. I mean, it makes sense that she dies, but it's a little odd at the same time because she's only had like two things where she got to shine, WandaVision, and now this. But overall, I like the conclusion to her arc. That really worked for me. I like what they did with the conclusion to Strange's arc, where him sort of figuring out that he doesn't have to be so arrogant all the freaking time, and that he doesn't have to hold a knife for every single situation, every single time. I think his arc is great, but Zombie Strange, a bit of a letdown. Very cool. I love the idea. They just could have done more. Coming in number 15 is going to be Spider-Man Far From Home. Another really fun one. There's not much I really have wrong with this one because I don't really make that I don't really care enough to make the claim that there was the action sequence in Berlin with the mysterious stuff was better. It was, but I don't really care enough to sort of just keep making that over and over again. But anyway, so overall, I really like this one. I've always really liked this one. There's a bunch of fun action sequences with Mysterio. The giant drone thing I think, is really fun. I think the second half of this movie, I think, is actually good. But the problem is that it's just the setup for it just was not handled well with the Edith glasses, with the way that the Mysterio was done, so that him just having scorn for Tony Stark for the 100th time. As much as I like Jake Gyllenhaal in the role, I just don't think the character was quite there. But she's amazing. I have no problems with him. I think I think the conclusion to Tom Holland's arc, or not really arc, but his situation where he finally got MJ to, and he finally is dating MJ at the end. I think that worked for me. I think there's some good humor moments with Happy, him throwing the shield, trying his best. That's pretty fun. I think there's a lot of fun parts of this. Some of the humor does take away from it a bit. Not as much as like stuff like Shang-Chi or Thor Ragnarok to an extent, or Thor Love and Thunder do, but overall, I do think this is a fun one. I do enjoy it. And rewatches, I don't like this part as much as I do in the past, and it does get overshadowed by the one that came before. And there's a lot of issues as the movie led up to it, but overall, I do enjoy this one. Coming in number 14 is going to be Iron Man 3. I think this one, some people just say it's just forgettable as an action sequence. I enjoy it. I think it's fun to see all of the Iron Man suits just come in and just fight. I think it's very fun. I like how some of them get taken out. That's the little Hulkbuster one. It's a bit of a nod to what comes in Age of Ultron. But I think overall the problem here, Killian is not a very interesting villain, and I think that's mainly what hurts it. But overall, I do actually really enjoy this action sequence. I like that Pepper gets in on the action. This movie sort of foreshadows what happens in End Game, where she gets in the final battle quite a bit and helps Strange stop the whole a waterfall thing that's appearing. I think overall it's a very fun final battle. I do really enjoy this one. My only real issue is just Killian, and also the epilogue where he says he's not putting on another suit, and Age of Ultron he literally puts on. There's a bit of an explanation there and during Civil War, but still, like, he literally said, I'm Iron Man no matter what. But take that out of the equation, great final battle. The Mandarin twist does kind of hurt it, but it doesn't really bother me that much. It's not as bad as everyone says it is. It's bad, but it's not that bad. And Shang-Chi does kind of improve it a bit. And I think the plot I was caring for the character and made for a good final battle. I thought it was fun. I was compelled by the end, satisfying conclusion, and Christmas time, even though I'm Jewish, so I'm not going to comment on religion here. But yeah, anyway, really enjoy this final battle. Fun, enjoyable, entertaining. I like what they did I like that they had although there's a bit too much plot line in there, but it concludes to a pretty satisfying final battle. And mixed in with some sequences before, like the airplane sequence. Great stuff. Coming in number 13 is going to be Captain America, The First Avenger. I've always really enjoyed this movie. I think the last couple fits in the movie, the last hour of the movie, will last like an hour and 15 minutes, where they're just montaging through World War II, and then it leads into the final battle. I think some of it's odd, but I think the stuff that works The action overall in the final battle I actually think is really good. I think it's handled well, starting off with the stuff on the motorcycle. I think the completion to Steve's arc actually works very well, where he ends up sacrificing himself to save in New York City or Moscow. I'm not 100% sure. I think that stuff all really works. I think that stuff works very well, very emotional, and I think the stuff with Peggy over on the other side of it works well. Action's well done. Joe Johnston knows how to film some good action, I'd say. And so all the stuff with him, the Red Skull, it's not the most satisfying when it comes to the fight. I think the fight with him and Red Skull is a bit forgettable, but I think honestly it does. I think the final battle is really good because of what they did with Steve. Not like on it's like kind of like Black Panther, but less so. But like a character level works very well. But on the superficial action level, it's still good. It's still really good, but I think they're definitely better. Coming in at number 12 is going to be the Incredible Hulk. Very definition of just a fun final battle. It's not the best conclusion out there to Banner's arc. I mean, it does conclude Thunderbolt Ross's arc, where Banner's not a fugitive or anything, but I think him and Abomination wrecking up Harlem, I think that's a ton of fun. Him using boxing gloves, boxing gloves, very fun. This is definitely my favorite part of the movie. I think there's 3 really good Hulk action sequences. There's the one at the beginning. There's the one this kind of the horror type action sequence, and then there's the one at the university, and then there's the final battle. All of them are really fun. This is by far my favorite of all of them. Just Abomination. I mean, not the best villain out there, but I mean, he's probably gonna be made better by She-Hulk for sure. So overall, I really enjoyed this final battle. Very good, very fun. It's just the definition of fun. Just him using. I think it's just a very fun final battle. It's never gonna be the best one out there, but it's always gonna be a fun time, and I always look forward to this sequence whenever I watch The Incredible Hulk. This is always usually the reason why I go back to this movie. Overall, very fun, very enjoyable, as I've said, and I mean, the story itself not the most interesting here, but I think they made the right and very fun conclusion. Feige, good job. Number 11 is going to be Doctor Strange. This is the definition of a bit of a different final battle because, it's not all, just a battle. I think it's about Doctor Strange sort of trying to turn the table with his time loop thing. I think that works very well, in my opinion. And also, I think all the stuff where time moves backwards at, the beginning of the final battle once he has to move time backwards or forwards. I think that all of that is a lot of fun. And I really enjoyed that part of it. And I love the Dormammu stuff. The Dormammu I've come to bargain line. It's a bit overplayed these days, but very fun final battle. I love the idea of it. It does conclude Doctor Strange's arc because at the beginning of the movie he's like, I would never sort of. He would just there to heal his hands, and he was very selfish and very rude and very disrespectful. And by the end, he essentially says, "I will keep us in eternity because that means everyone on Earth is saved." And I think that is just very profound stuff, and that's very well handled. I love this whole bit. It's one of my favorite. I love the second half of this movie. The first, I say I'm not that big of a fan of this movie, and it's always been lower in my rating because I just don't care for the first half. I just think it's boring. Second half, great. From the moment that the whole clock thing in London just bum 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 to the rest of the movie, great. No problems to that. It's not the most exciting final battle because it's really just him trying to fake out Dormammu, but in the end you did have some very exciting action sequences 30 minutes before, so who needs that anymore? Coming in number 10 is going to be Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. I actually think this final battle is well handled. I do complain about a lot of the CGI that was early, and this one is definitely probably the most CGI part of the entire movie. But that's because they just could have made all of the stuff before a bit more grounded, like the bus fight or the fight on the balcony, whatever you want to call it, the construction stuff in Macau. So overall, I do really enjoy this final battle. It's a very fun boss fight, more or less, between the Talo dragon and the creature dragon, whatever it's called. I think that's a lot of fun, and also the stuff with Wenwu is great. I really like that. I think he's one of my favorite villains in the MCU, and starting from the beginning of the movie, it's all paid off here. and I think it's paid off very well. And the fact that he ends up on the good side practically, and he has a very interesting history because he's been living for so long, and then he starts at bad for a long time, and then he realizes that there's more to the universe than just power, or the more to the earth than just power. So then he gets married, moves out, starts a family, and then by the time then she dies, and then yeah, okay. I'm just started summarizing, but in the end, it works very well. I loved all of that. The problem here is that the the Trevor Slattery, there's like a few bits where like there's just humor just thrown in there for no reason, just because it's an MCU movie, it has to be funny, and that really annoys me. So overall, I do really enjoy this final battle. Pays off the movie very well. And as I was engaged throughout this final battle the entire time, I was getting shot at this movie because it's one of the more entertaining MCU movies. And some people kind of dogged on it. I enjoyed this one. Coming in number 9 is going to be Captain America: The Winter Soldier. I really enjoyed this final battle. Great conclusion. There were some better action sequences like the elevator sequence, the bridge, whatever sequence, the car chase, and a few more. I love this movie. This is my favorite MCU movie probably, and it has a great final battle. I love all the conclusion with Bucky, the helicarriers, Sam flying around. There's just a lot of fun action here. The only problem I have with it is just like I just think there are just better sequences. It drags out a bit. It's a bit of a long sequence. That's what I'll say. I think it's a good final battle. I don't know if it's perfect because I just don't know if it's just not. I just think there are better action sequences in the movie. There's more standout bits, but it's a good conclusion. I was engaged the entire time. I think it's very satisfying. I love the stuff on ground with Robert Redford and Fury. I think that stuff, and all the stuff between Cap and Bucky, that was very well handled. I think this is the definition of a bit of a formulaic, but I think a really well done final battle. Same goes to my next. And overall, love what they did with Bucky here. It was done very well. No real issues with it. And I don't really know can't exactly describe Cap's arc, but sort of him and I think him knowing that that's Bucky as the Winter Soldier kind of puts him at a bit of a place in a way, because now he realizes that his best friend is now out there just fighting for Hydra more or less, and then he has to solve it. I think a lot of the stuff that's set up here is paid off very well in Civil War. I've already mentioned some of my only problems, but I love what they did with Nick Fury. I love what they did with Natasha. I think all of that stuff worked. This final battle is really good. It's just not my favorite. I just think there's some others that are better. That's it. Coming in number 8 is going to be Guardians of the Galaxy. This one's very templated, and that's sort of like keeps me from putting it higher. It's my second favorite MCU movie, probably. This or Winter Soldier. It's between the two. And I think with this one, very good. The only real issue I have with it is that it's very formulaic. You got your fun action sequences. You got your space battle. You got your dance-off. You got your threats. I mean, he has a threat. He's just not a very good villain. But I think overall, this final battle is very well handled. Starting I think with all of the Ravengers on the Guardians of the Galaxy, they come up with a fun plan. I think it's just a very fun final battle. I think that's a great part of the movie, and I think all the bits where like that kind of come out cringy, like the dance off and the We Are Groot, both handled very well. James Gunn knows how to handle this kind of stuff. He knows how to handle team up movies. He knows how to end them, and this is no exception. Very good final battle. Ronan, not the most interesting villain, but he's not the focus of the movie. I don't even think he really hurts the movie because he's not the focus. Even though he has a lot of screen time, he's not the focus. And I've never really hated him as much as other people do. He's not a good villain, but he's not a horrible villain. I think he poses a threat to the Guardians, and there's not really any real issues with him other than he's just not that interesting. There you go. I really enjoyed this final battle. Very fun. It's just a bit formulaic compared to some of the other ones. There's some deaths, like a group, and I think it's a well-handled sequence, but, like, does it feel like out of the blue that Groot will somehow die or that one of them would die or something? Not really. Coming in number 7 is going to be Avengers Age of Ultron. This one, another really good one. I really enjoy this one. This is the great final battle of the movie. The movie I have a bit of issues with, but it's concluded very well here. All the Ultron bots, great cannon fodder for the Hulk. I think the Ultron versus Vision sort of rivalry there works very well. The Ultron versus Tony rivalry there works very well. I think all of their characters are sort of trying to do something to help. And I think in the end, with Tony and Thor blowing up the place having to save it, works very well. I like what they did with Wanda and Hawkeye there. there where she's sort of very scared and then he has to help her. I think all that stuff works very well. Very similar to the first Avengers one. I don't think it's as good because it's just a bit more going on. I don't think it's as fun, and it didn't seem like the writers are having as much fun writing this as the first one. But here, there's a lot of great final battles. It's a great adventure. All the Avengers final battles are very good. It's no exception. Really enjoyed this one. Ends in a good enough way with the Hulk going off. Satisfying. But I feel like this final battle just has too many endings. It just ends in a bunch of places. Ultron's killed off there. He's killed off there. There's just too many spots. And there's just too many endings. That's my only real issue. And also I just feel like I like the other ones more. It's the same excuse I have all the time. But overall, really do enjoy this one. Quicksilver's death. In the context of the movie, I guess it works, but in the context of the character, not so much. But I think Ultron, great. I really enjoy Ultron as a villain. I think he's very good. So I think this is a great conclusion to his movie. Coming in number 6 is going to be Thor Ragnarok. I love this movie. I've always loved it. Been always one of my favorites. I mentioned in my Thor movies, right? I'm not going to go into that. So I've always loved this final battle. Hela, not the most interesting villain, but I think all the stuff that's set up in the movies paid off very well here. The action's very fun. Led Zeppelin's Immigrant Song, very good, well placed here. The beginning is a little odd, but here it's very well placed. And I think it makes the final battle very fun, very lively, very energetic, very Taika Waititi. And Thor learning the lesson that his hammer isn't what his power comes from. It's just the thing that he harnesses his power with. I think that stuff works very well, and him just going all at it against Hela's army, I guess, more or less. That really works for me. I think all of that handled very well. The only problem, there's a Hulk joke just thrown in there, and I mean it's I do find it funny, but like it was just oddly thrown in there, and also the dog wolf, whatever it's called, the fight between him and Hulk is odd, and I mean him biting him on the arm or whatever is kind of just a foreshadow for what happens in Infinity War, where Hulk just can't hold down. I think it's because of that, not because of what Thanos did to him. And with all of that said, it kind of makes sense in that way. So I really enjoyed it. This movie, loved the final battle, great conclusion. Also gives us a little lesson on what do we consider home. And there's fun moments, there's satisfying moments. There's what's it called? Surtur destroying Asgard. There's a ton of fun to be had here. I just don't know if it's as emotionally resonant as my top five. That's all I can really say. Coming in number 5 is going to be Captain America Civil War. Not the biggest action sequence out there. We had that with the airport action sequence. It is one of my favorite sequences in the entire MCU. Here, we had a very personal final battle fight between Tony and Cap and Bucky. I think some of it not handled the best because, I mean, it is very character-based. I mean, it shows that Tony is very impulsive, and he is. And it all really just builds up to this bit. I feel like it was a very odd thing to build up to, but nonetheless, the action sequence itself, very good. It's not the most satisfying conclusion, but it's not really supposed to be, and it sets up Infinity War where our characters are divided. Thanos is coming, and we all have to get ready for war. But it does set up some things like Bucky finally going back to regular Bucky, like in Captain America: The First Avenger, and Spider-Man getting his solo movie. And I think the introductions to Spider-Man, Black Panther handled very well here. There you go. And overall, this final battle didn't have the biggest stakes. It didn't have the highest antics, but it made for a great fight, and a very personal fight between Tony and Cap, especially, where Tony thought it was not right for Cap to not have told him that Bucky was the one who killed his parents, even though it was under Hydra. And it's a bit odd that Tony would just go be so impulsive about it, because he never really cared for he never really cared for his parents that much. So some odd character stuff there, but overall, I think it's just because of how personal it is, and because of how this movie builds to it, especially with the stuff with Zemo and Black Panther. That's all handled very well. Really, I do really like this one, and the movie builds up to it very well, and I think it's the right way to end the movie, though not perfect. Coming in number 3 is going to be Avengers Infinity War. Absolutely love this one. There are two sides of it. First one's the Battle of Titan side, very personal, very fun, like what they do with Tony, all the certain rivalries like between Quill and Thanos, Strange and Thanos, Tony and Thanos. It all really works. Some of the Spider-Man stuff is a lot of fun. And I love that part of it. And then there's the Battle of Wakanda side. I don't like it as much, but I still think it's a lot of fun because there's some great moments, and it's just a fun big battle. Some great moments like with War Machine destroying all of the crocodile thingies, movies. Not Thanos, Thor coming in. What's it called? There's a great moment with Captain America where he holds up the fist, even because he know that he won't win that little bit, but he just does it because he just cares about protecting. There are some issues. For the main one generally is that just characters make dumb decisions, like they won't destroy Vision Stone. Star-Lord won't kill Gamora because he knows that she has something important. They're understandable choices, but just can frustrate me sometimes. If I'm in that sort of grumpy mood, then they really frustrated me. But if I don't really care as much, then they don't. So it's just a mood type opinion. So, and then also, I think there are just some things that could have been done better, like the Hulkbuster CGI is a little odd. Not the suit itself, but like when he's inside the suit, it's just huge and not done well. I think the stuff they did with Tony in Age of Ultron was way better than the stuff with Banner in here. But overall, amazing final battle. Very epic in scale, and it concludes the movie very well. The Thanos stuff on here, amazing, better than ever. I absolutely love this final battle. It's just a few steps away from being perfect, and also it's not as satisfying because our heroes obviously die, but overall very well handled. It has the fun moments when it needs to, has the very serious moment it needs to, and there's always that tension. There's not really any humor that really gets in the way. I mean, sure, there's the thing with I'm Groot, I'm Steve Rogers thing, but that doesn't really get in the way. But overall, amazing final battle, concludes the movie very well, concludes all the arcs we needed to. Amazing. Picking off the top three is going to be Spider-Man No Way Home. I'm in the camp of the people that does think this movie's a bit overrated. Really good, overrated. The first half, decent. Second half, fantastic. Because of Tobey and Andrew. They brought them in. 3 Spider-Men battling 5 classic Spider-Man villains. I mean, I guess Doc Ock's a hero, but doesn't matter. All of it's very fun, and I think the arc that this concludes for Tom Holland is that with him and Green Goblin is that revenge is not always perfect. I mean, it's an arc that's stated in many superhero movies. I mean, not just superhero movies, many movies and genres. Some Bond movies try to do like Quantum of Solace and 48 Hours Only. It's not really well handled, the Bond movies, but now what I'm talking about here. Very great conclusion to the movie. Very fun. I love how the Spider-Man have to work together. They have to find a way to do it. All very well handled. As I said, the only real issue is that there's just some effects that just don't look good here. Like, there's some of the Green Goblin stuff doesn't look great. But speaking of Green Goblin, I think the fact that Tom Holland has to learn that revenge is his arc at the end with with him accepting that he made this mistake and then he has to fix it, but that means losing everyone he knows essentially. And I wonder how they're gonna play with this if they do make a sequel here. I mean, I don't exactly know. I can't really predict anything, but you never know. So other stuff I really like, the stuff with to Andrew saving MJ. I think that bit was so profound. I've seen scripts. I don't exactly remember what it was, but it was a very like heartbreaking moment because he didn't save Gwen Stacy, and then I think that moment works very well overall. And especially because it's on the Statue of Liberty, that's all really fun. I think it's a great final battle. It has fun. It has emotion. Has 5 pretty good villains for the most part, and against 3 Spider-Men. What else could you ask for? Very great conclusion to a movie that is overrated. It's very overrated. People say it's the best thing ever. I'm like, no, it's not. Batman's better. But overall, great final battle. Nothing else to say. Coming number 2 is going to be The Avengers. I think, honestly, when I watched this movie a couple days ago, so a bit of recency bias. I was debating between No Way Home and Avengers, but we'll put this one ahead for me. It seems like the writers in this that wrote this final battle just seemed like they were having the best time ever. Like, it just seemed like they were having a great time. They had to throw in the moments. I was like, Hulk does this. You know exactly what I'm talking about with him when he throws Loki. I think just mixed moments like that they're just so fun and funny, and it could have felt out of place in some other MCU movies, but here it just works. And overall, just everyone gets their moment to shine, and then some shots are improved, like the one Hawkeye shoots the arrow, and the show Hawkeye, you see that there. And overall, just love this final battle. I think it's flawless. There is the perfect conclusion. The movie has very weird pacing throughout it, but really the main reason why I just go back to this movie every time is because of the final battle. Everyone gets their moment. Very well done. Loki, great threat to the Avengers. I think the Chitauri make for great cannon fodder for the Hulk, and just great cannon fodder for the Avengers in general. I think it's all so much fun as they're battling, and then New York City's getting destroyed. There's some emotional bits where Tony has to get the nuke, and then has to go through the portal. That stuff is great, and that's where the anxiety attacks start, and then leading to Iron Man 3, and then And then the epilogue is pretty fun with the well, not necessarily the epilogue, the post credit scene with the shawarma. That doesn't matter. So overall, I think this final battle, everything about it just works so well, and everything just great. I have nothing else to say. Well done, Kevin Feige and Whedon and MCU. Made a great final battle, and especially for like the first Avengers, because like it's the first time we ever got a team up movie, and it's a very simple movie overall. But I think the first two acts are not the best. They're very oddly paced. But then as you get to the final act, that's where all concludes. Very well done. Concludes everybody's arc, especially Tony's, where he makes the sacrifice. Steve makes a comment about that early in the movie. Well done. Great final battle. No issues. It's just, I just like my number one more. Coming number one is obvious. It's Avengers End Game. I think this is everyone's number one. They brought everything together. This is how they concluded the entire Infinity Saga. It concludes right here. And well done. I think the first two acts, kind of like the Avengers, are not the best out there, but I still really like them. Compared to the Avengers, they're way better. Like, I mean, you have the stuff, you have the great stuff in the first act where it's like a bit somber, and then the second act, the time travel stuff. Don't love it. Have some issues with it, like the whole, like a lot. Some of the bits in New York are not the best, but I love the bits in the 70s. And I like the whole thing on Asgard, and yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. This final battle is amazing. The only thing is that the Avengers won't come out of this one. Not everyone gets their moment exactly, but it's too big where to everyone for. I mean, some of them get their little moments, like Drax doing this to one of the beings. So there's a lot of great moments here. Tony making the sacrifice, that was overall worth. Even before that, with Thor, Tony, and Cap battling Thanos, even that was a great bit overall. But everyone coming in the line and Cap saying Avengers Assemble, just very well done. And every time I watch this movie, this is always the part I look forward to. I mean, that's probably everybody. It's always the part I enjoy the most. It's awesome. I love it. It's amazing. Everyone thinks that. Hopefully, you'd be weird if you didn't. And where I think in the comics this whole bit was like very messy, the Russo brothers just made it perfectly. Where like, I mean, I don't know about perfectly, but like they made it so that like it wasn't messy. I mean, the Captain Marvel stuff, I'm not a fan of her, but I guess it works well enough. That's the one minor flaw that I'd have with it, but I can't not put this at number one. I mean, it's the big conclusion, and they did a hell of a job. It was amazing. And that concludes this ranking. Thank you guys. So tell me what you thought in the comments. Well, I've had a big criteria, like how was it set up and stuff. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Thank you guys so much for watching. Tell me your ranking in the comments below. I'm gonna go to bed. I'm exhausted after filming that. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment down below. And I'll see you guys next time. Adios.